already a little bit. I know people were already in the comments earlier on going on about it. I have a unique perspective on it, so I'm going to let you go first.
So look, being in Jacksonville, the cocktail party belongs here. It just feels natural. It's always been a part of Jacksonville itself. It gives Georgia and Florida somewhat of a neutral site to always play that game. And if you've ever walked into that stadium and seen the line that is literally drawn right down the center of the red and black and the orange and blue, and both of the bands are playing back and forth together, both of the fans are just chanting their team chants. It is one of the most iconic, and to me, one of the most looked forward to games of the year. Not to mention, the game itself isn't as exciting as what's happening outside the stadium. It is called the world's largest outdoor cocktail party for a reason. The RVs start rolling in on Wednesday. These things plug in. They're there. You walk and you walk and you walk, and it is miles of people who have come down or up for this game. To take it out of Jacksonville feels a little bit weird. Now, it happened for a very, very short period of time when the Jaguars were coming in and they had to meet certain stadium expectations for the NFL. Florida played in Sanford Stadium, and Sanford Stadium played down in Gainesville, and they did a 1-1. But as fast as they could get the game back in Jacksonville, they did. There's always been some back and forth a little bit to where do they feel that there's a desire for each team to actually get to play in the other stadium. But as long as I've known the Florida Georgia game, I'm old.
That's fact.
That's where it's been. I mean, like wooden bleachers, you could bring in your own coolers. It felt natural for college football, just like the Texas-Oklahoma game. It's the Texas State Fair. And it's just you drop this football game into the middle of it, and it just becomes this mecca of what it looks like is the biggest outdoor cocktail party, tailgate, whatever you want to call it. But it is miles of just fun. Even as an FSU fan, I go every year. I walk around. I wear an FSU shirt. The most used comment ever is, "I think you're at the wrong game." I know where I am. I know where I am down here.
Well, you don't know because you're drunk, but you know.
Well, I mean that's residual from the night before.
So
yes.
so you think it should stay?
Of course, yes, absolutely. I mean, especially right now when we feel like we're just kind of ripping away certain traditions out of college football. Don't take that one.
So there's two parts to this. From a fan side of things, I think it's black and white. There's no reason you should ever move it out of Jacksonville. It's absurd, right? Where the Kirby's playing is the recruiting side, because you can't bring recruits to a neutral site. And so look, it's benefiting the Gators too. And it's tough because I don't want it to move. I would hate for it to move. But I also know that, look, we even talked about it on the cast with Scott from on Sunday of what's the biggest rivalry, right? It's Florida versus Georgia. The energy for those games is insane. And when Bama plays Auburn, right, it's either in Bama or Auburn. That's a big game for recruits to go and see kind of like your teams at their max. Florida or FSU, they're playing at each other's house, right? Miami, FSU, playing at each other's houses. So these big games, LSU, Bama, at each other's houses. Right? So they have the opportunity to go and bring those recruits. And those are big games. Those are big kind of swaying games. If you can bring somebody into LSU versus Bama, I mean, LSU at any time is huge, but right? That's huge. So I get it. From that side, I like everyone's calling him a crybaby. I'm like, yeah, but it makes sense. Like that's a big game. We as Gator fans know that is the game of that is the rivalry. It's not FSU really. It's Florida Georgia. We talked about it this weekend. It's the bigger game. Like, FSU's fun, but honestly, to me, it's at a weird time of the year. It's at the end, so kind of depending on how our seasons go, it's weird, right? But for some reason, that Florida-Georgia game, it's a who's going to take first place kind of game in the SEC East. So it has a lot of value. So I see both sides. I don't think he's being a baby. I think he's honestly being like, hey, like we're losing out. The teams that we're competing against are having an upper hand because they get to bring recruits to their massive games. From a fan perspective, you're like, yeah, why would you ever take that away? Like you just said, people are driving their RVs down. It's a week-long event. 100%. People are making a ton of money off of it. And that's where the other part of it is. I'm like, is it worth the money that you get from these events, right? The schools, I don't know how much they're getting. Could they get more if it went home? I don't know. I don't think so because I think they're able to, because of all around it, right? That place is built for that. But I get where he's coming from. I've never considered it. I've always thought it was dumb and kind of just brushed it off. But I think with being more invested in it and talking about it more and seeing it, I support it. I would be pissed.
Wouldn't the easy outcome be to just say you can take recruits?
But then, so
like,
I think
would the easy solution be like,
yes, but then that changes the rule, I guess, for everybody. But at the same time, look, yes, I agree with you because I'm pretty sure when you guys Bama played for FSU, that wasn't at home, that was neutral, right? And that would have been a great, that would have been a great game for. So that means they can't bring in the bowl games or anything like that.
When we play LSU this year, we're playing in the.
If I had to guess, I bet that rule's into place so people can't take recruits to bowl games because then now there's teams that don't get to play in bowl games, right? And now those teams have an upper hand, an outside advantage that if schools aren't able to go to a bowl game just because of where they're at.
But I mean, think about how many neutral site games they started coming up with. I mean, if you look back in the last 10 years, there's a college football kickoff weekend that ends on Labor Day, and there's always that crescendo to the Labor Day game, right? Which was just a couple of years ago. It was Alabama FSU. It was in Atlanta. So yeah, so you're right. I mean, it's a strong possibility that the reasoning that you can't take recruits to a neutral site game is to keep bowl games from mattering that much. But we've put a lot of emphasis on neutral site games. Notre Dame played a neutral site game to open the year a couple of years ago.
Look, I think that might be the fix.
It's just become part of the normal scheduling now. It feels.
Sure, I agree with that. I agree. But Georgia and Florida, that's always a big game, like a one-off game. That game it's exciting for the year, for the season, but it's not just a massive game in a sense for the schools every year in and year out that you're missing out on.